Hello, friends. I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope it's fantastic. Everything here is great. It's not scorchingly hot outside, and that's pretty great. Brought the Kindle today because I want to talk about a couple of books. We have talked. This past month I read 3 books from this series. This series is called Joe Pickett from the author C.J. Box. The first book, I think it was called Open Season. I read it at the start of June, and it was fantastic. I read it because we went to Colorado. I fell in love with the Rockies. I wanted to read some stuff that was based in the Rockies and especially modern times. So I picked up that book and I loved it. It was a very good book. I think we did a full review here on the channel. I'm not positive, but it was really well written. The plotting was great. The pacing was great. Whatever. So there's 24 books in this series, and I've been continuing. I have since read the next 2 books in the series. So today we're talking about 2 books. The first book and the second book in that series is called Savage Run, which tells a little story about some natives, whatever, you get it, right? Little racism in there, but it's not on the author, like that's just what it's called. And the second book is called Winterkill, or the third book, the one I just finished, is called Winterkill. And while I really loved the first book, I loved the character of Joe Pickett. He is a game warden, like the only one in his whole little district. There's a little talk in there at some point about how the state's cut back, and now there used to be multiple game wardens for a patrol area, and now there's just this one. Whatever. He's a game warden. He goes and hands out hunting and fishing violations. He's a bit of a dummy. Like, he kind of bumbles his way through things, a little bit of a Barney Fife type character, but not that idiotic. He just doesn't, he doesn't think fast, and so people take advantage of him. And then he has those moments later where he goes, whatever. But somehow, he ends up being the hero. Somehow, he ends up being the most competent law enforcement officer in this whole area. That's the character of Joe Pickett. And while the first book was fantastic, these next 2 books, it's like an entirely different author wrote them. The writing is not good. It's almost amateur at times. The use of passive tense or passive voice it's numbing. I wish I could search on my Kindle for a word and see how many times that word shows up. He writes the word had, as in he had gone over there, instead of he went over there. He writes the word had twice a sentence. There's got to be thousands of instances of that word in these books. That's just, what? And it drives me mad every time I see it. Like, you couldn't have used why did you use this passive voice? Why couldn't you have put, like, a stronger verb in? Or you just used the verb. You don't need the had in front of it. We get it. We know we're in past tense. Whatever. Anyway, that's maddening. But the second book, so Savage Run, deals with kind of a bit of a political backlash kind of thing, but it really comes down to the main villain being kind of a the dude from No Country for Old Men, whatever that character is, the weirdo that kills people with the cattle prod. The villain in this is basically that guy. I get the feeling that it's heavily modeled after that guy. He's kind of like a non-speaking, just bad guy who's evil for the sake of being evil. And he's very good at what he does, which is kill people. He was something like I forget the word for it, but he was some sort of like cowboy tracker, like that. He would go out and find rustlers and capture them or whatever, kind of like a frontier policeman, frontier bounty hunter of sorts. And since that trade has dried up, he's turned into this kind of political assassin, and he ends up in Joe's area, and whatever. People die, you know. Joe ends up saving the day somewhat accidentally, like just kind of bumbles his way through it. The story I thought was pretty good. Like it was pretty okay. It had some moments where you're kind of like, all right, whatever. But for overall, the structure was fine. The pacing was fine. There's a whole lot of Joe's family in these books, and so we get a whole lot of really tender moments with him and his daughters and his wife, and you get to see both sides of the man. You get to see this like game warden who is like infallibly just, who will like doesn't cross any lines ever, and like seeks out the answers to things because it's the right thing to do, not because he's doing his job. Like he does other people's jobs for them because they're corrupt politicians, they're corrupt police officers, they're that kind of thing. And then we get to Winterkill. And this book, I mean, I gave it a 3. It's probably a 2. It's got the bad writing. It's got the passive voice that's just super boring to read, super distracting at times. But it's just so... There's this main character, the main villain is a woman who just is the typical just like bitchy coward that will, you know, tell people to do her bidding, and it's just tired. It's a very tired character. But on top of that, the whole premise of this thing is like, I mean, it's almost like it almost reads like a superhero story or something. There's just this complete nonsensical group of people that form a convoy and move into the area and set up their sovereign state of free men, and then the FBI's there. And there's just this comical gathering of people that are somehow led by this Forest Service bureaucrat woman. Not, you know, the FBI shows up and they bow to her, and everybody just kind of does what she says, but she's obviously unhinged, and it's just... it was a convoluted mess. It was not a very good book. It was what I wanted. I got to read a lot about the Rockies. I got to read a lot of cowboy stuff, and I got to read a lot of, you know, hunting and trapping. Like, I got to read about interesting things, but the premise was so far out there, and Joe's just bumbling idiocracies. It was just weird. It was a weird book. And like I said, it reads almost like these 2 books that I just finished were written by a completely different author. And from what I have found, they basically were. I mean, C.J. Box wrote them. But C.J. Box spent 10 years writing the first book and polishing the first book and making sure it worked. And it did. And it worked really well. It was very, very good. These books he wrote in 1 year, wrote and published it. He's done a book every year since. And you can tell, like, the writing is sloppy, the premises are weird, the dialogue is sometimes preachy, and you know, the characters just say things just to fill you in as the reader, which I hate that kind of dialogue. It's just a very strange... I don't know. I am going to continue the series. I have read series like this before where I've hit these kind of like, is this guy just this bad of a writer and we just got lucky on the first book or whatever? I don't think so. I think I think he's got good ideas, and I'm hoping that this character matures because I like the kind of bumbling hero. I like that he's a little bit idiotic. I like that he's, you know, kind of slow, works his way through things and figures out what nobody else could figure out. You know, the FBI is there, the police department's there, the Forest Service, there's all of these detectives, and they can't figure anything out, and this bumbling game warden figures it all out. I like that. And I'll continue reading for that. But I'm not going to continue reading because the writing's good. It's not good. But I do enjoy the books. I don't know how to say it. Like, it's a very weird situation. I'm going to pause on it. I did buy the 4th book. It's already loaded on my Kindle. But I'm going to go... I haven't read any horror this in a couple of months, so I'm going to read it. I'm actually working on a horror book right now. I just started it. And a couple other things. I finished a little short story this morning or whatever. But I will continue reading the series, and unless something changes and I'm like wowed, I probably won't talk about the books anymore. I'll just read them and enjoy them. Unless you really want to hear about them. I don't know. Maybe somebody out there is like, I really want to hear your thoughts on these books. Because they are like, best-selling books. These books are selling like crazy, and they're not well written, not well thought out, not well plotted, but they are entertaining. I need to watch a TV show. There is a TV show. There was 2 seasons of it on like Peacock or something like that. I would like to watch them just to see the characters and see see the Rockies, because that's awesome. Okay, got any questions, thoughts, comments, whatever? Put them down below. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know sounds smart is watermark. It's announcing a faint design, graphic, or lettering pressed into paper while it's still in the pulp form. The CEO's classy letterhead bears a watermark of the company logo. Watermark. W-A-T-E-R-M-A-R-K. Does it actually have to be pressed in anymore? Like if I print a real faint watermark, is that still not a watermark?